describe a shadow presidency, basically run through a series of White House aides and the Autopen. What specific executive actions do you believe were signed without President Biden's knowledge, and what's the evidence that supports those claims?
Well, we just focused on the legal documents. We just focused on pardons and executive orders. We brought 12 of Biden's inner circle individuals in for depositions. They had hours and hours and hours, Matt, to explain to us how Joe Biden was involved in the decision-making process of the various pardons and the various executive orders. Each staffer gave conflicting reports as to how the Autopen use was authorized. But at the end of the day, one thing that was consistent with 11 of the 12 staffers, and that's everyone but Jeff Zients, the chief of staff in the end, was that they never saw Joe Biden. They never heard from Joe Biden. They were never in any meeting or policy discussions with Joe Biden when he talked about the pardons or talked about the executive orders, that, there was no chain of custody. There was no consistency in how the use of the Autopen. I think it's safe to say that there was a cover-up of Joe Biden's mental decline. We gave the White House physician, Dr. O'Connor, an opportunity to come in and defend his all the statements that he released saying Joe Biden was in perfect physical and mental shape, and he pled the Fifth Amendment to avoid self-incrimination. So when we brought in people like Ian Sams, who I've battled with, and you've battled with, Matt, when you were here fighting the good fight, Ian Sams would go in front of the cameras every day and talk about Joe Biden, and Joe Biden said this and that. And when we had him under oath, he admitted he only met and spoke to Joe Biden in person 2 times in 2 years. Neera Tanden, his executive secretary, who we see Trump's executive secretary with him multiple times a day, she only had limited communication with Joe Biden. They kept Joe Biden shielded. There was a cover-up of his mental decline, and there's no evidence that exists, no notes, nothing that exists that Joe Biden was involved in any of the decision-making process with the pardons and the executive orders.
Well, then, if Joe Biden was unaware that the power of the presidency was being stolen underneath his nose, who was really running that cover-up operation?
Well, it appears to me that Joe Biden was very involved. Her chief of staff was very involved, who pled the Fifth when we brought him in and asked him a bunch of questions. And then, Jeff Zients was the chief of staff. One thing that about made us fall out of our chairs was when Jeff Zients was being deposed. He said, when we asked who all was in the room in the decision-making process with certain pardons, he said, well, Hunter Biden was in the room. I mean, are you kidding me? The Democrats would attack us for investigating the Biden family influence peddling, and then to find out that Hunter Biden had a seat at the table in the decision-making process for the pardon after he himself had been pardoned. I mean, you can't make this stuff up. At the end of the day, you never saw Joe Biden issue a statement or answer questions about any of those pardons. To this day, he's never done that. He never spoke.
But to be clear, you think Jill Biden was running this cover-up operation? You think she was the head of it?
They never would admit that anyone was operating the cover-up other than Joe Biden. They just never saw Joe Biden make any of the decisions.
Yeah, but somebody had to keep Biden away from everybody else, and someone had to be making the decisions. Is there anyone other than Jill Biden who was doing that?
I think Jeff Zients and Jill Biden and Jill Biden's staff were probably the ones that were shielding Joe Biden from everyone. Look, even Pete Buttigieg admitted he went months without seeing Joe Biden at the end of the presidency. They shielded him from everyone. And one of the most damning pieces of evidence of Joe Biden's mental decline is the audio of the Robert Hur deposition of Joe Biden. He didn't, he got confused and thought he was still vice president. He got confused on what year it was. This was the one time when Joe Biden, as president of the United States, had to sit down for more than 10 minutes and answer questions. And I mean, it's appalling. If anyone watched that video of Robert Hur questioning Joe Biden, there won't be any question as to whether or not Joe Biden was mentally fit to be president of the United States. And
do you think all these foreign leaders knew it, Mr. Chairman? The foreign leaders that would meet with Biden, did they have a sense that this is a guy who didn't have his faculties?
You would assume they did when Joe Biden would have to be led around.
For all our viewers asking where One America News is heading in the future, we would like to introduce you to OAN Live. OAN Live is the best way to stay up to date on all of the hard-hitting, straight-shooting, national and international headlines. And the best part is, OAN Live is only $4.99 per month. All the credible, honest, unbiased reporting One America News offers at a fraction of the cost of cable. Just go to OANN.com to easily sign up for OAN Live and stay informed.